Hi, welcome to this video. Today I'm sitting here with Charis Melina Brown. She's a spiritual teacher, a healer, and an author. And she's gonna help lead us through a quick meditation before we begin talking about some awakening energies that have been happening lately.
All right, thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I feel like these little intention setting things are great to do before any opening. So how about if you guys listening want to, close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths, and let your soul drop into your body. Become aware of your five senses, what you're feeling, hearing, tasting, smelling, seeing. And let's all just set the intention that as we breathe in fresh oxygen, and then on our exhales, release anything we no longer need, that we open ourselves, surrounded by beautiful protection and guidance and alignment and healing. Open ourselves to the next steps of our own path, setting the intention that everything said during this call is helpful and clear, easy to absorb, easy to come through, easy to assimilate, useful. Setting the intention that each person who hears this, whether it be now or later, is benefited by this information, and also surrounding them in blessings, in guidance, asking synchronicity to come help show the way, and becoming mindful that each of us is a center of potential illumination and amazing epiphany that can change our world. Sending love and gratitude, taking one more deep breath in to set these. I'm releasing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. That's wonderful. What I wanted to ask was, what are some major signs that happen when you're first waking up to there being something more than just the physical reality, more than just our bodies, and more than just even our mental energy, understanding that there's a greater purpose and greater energy available to us. What are like the first things that kind of come up for people usually?
The stirrings. Yeah, it feels like often a deep curiosity. Some huge markers are when you go on those weird internet research binges at 1 a.m. You know, when things start finding you, when you keep seeing things around, synchronicity is huge. Things you see on billboards, hear in songs, hear in conversations, pass at the grocery store, that signs come to you. That, yeah, you feel that hunger to research things that are not necessarily what you've been into before. Also, a lot of people on the path experience being open to things that before they were expressly shut to. Before they had no desire to research that. They did not believe that it was real. They did not think, which can be a little difficult because you can sometimes doubt your sanity. If you're like, wait a minute, I've always believed that people who believed in this were nuts, and now I'm starting to believe in it. Does it mean that I'm nuts? And that's when it's important to have grounded friends around who you can talk to and who love you, but who do have open minds, especially if you're leaving one paradigm and going into another. A deep hunger or thirst for knowledge, like you can't get enough, like you just go read a bunch of books or watch a bunch of videos or listen to a bunch of podcasts, and you just feel voracious, like so thirsty, so hungry, because there's a piece of you that's waking up and that needs to be educated so you can have the vocabulary to talk about it, so you can already understand. Before my big awakening, or actually as it was going on, I went into grad school, I was like, I'm going to merge mind, body, spirit medicine. This doesn't exist yet. I'm going to do this. And then I realized after research that actually, yes, it did exist, and it had for decades. I wasn't doing anything new, but I had no idea because a lot of this stuff doesn't hit the mainstream. So I would say do your research, allow yourself to go as deep down the rabbit holes as you want, but make sure you stay as grounded as possible, stay in your body, make sure you keep eating, make sure you keep exercising, and doing all the things to maintain your physical vessel so that when stuff does come through, you're cohesive and you don't have to kind of kick yourself off your center to accept it.
For sure, for sure. I know, like, when I first was awakening, part of what awoke me actually was just like a simple book, like this little book of Eastern wisdom, and a quote in there was like something about you can't find happiness outside of yourself. The only place you can really find it is by going within and finding happiness within, so that it can be reflected to you on the outer. And I'm paraphrasing and I'm adding to that.
Yeah, we get it.
But that was like a major aha moment for me. And what I had realized was that I was searching too much outside of myself for happiness and relying on other people to make me happy. And when I realized that, oh, I have to find it within myself, and to really like care about how I feel before I worry too much what other people think and stuff. Like that was kind of one of my lessons at that time. And then when I realized that, I felt like, yeah, like more synchronicity was starting to happen. And I felt led to move away from Montana to Portland, Oregon, and to pursue becoming an astrologer, because I mean, I always kind of was interested in astrology, but then I was like, I'm going to go and, you know, become one.
Yeah. We need more. We need all we can get. That's something else. All the healers, all the teachers, the world needs all of us. So I hear often people who are coming out, especially women who are feeling the call to be teachers, healers, guides, say, well, someone else is doing this, so maybe I shouldn't. And no, we need everyone who is feeling the call to come. I'm definitely a believer that this is not a competitive industry, that we need all the flavors and all the people to do their thing, and for us all to support each other, and be really humble about it, while also being proud of who we are and what we've worked for. I think that's really important. So yes, educating ourselves is great, but also I feel like there's a wave. First you're that hunger for possibly years, but now, I mean, I don't hardly ever listen to spiritual teachers. I'll pop on some Abraham Hicks every now and then, but when people ask me, what do you think of what this person says, or that person says, or that person says these days, and who knows, maybe in the future I'll circle back around and feel differently. Mm-hmm. But these days, it's almost like if I listen to others' wisdom, it kind of clogs my filter. I need to just keep it clear so I can align correctly, and then I get it through my way. And we all eventually say the same things anyways, because it's all universal truth. It's just a bunch of different translations, just like, you know, different diets or
it's
different layers of spirit health.
You're back.
All right, we're in the woods. We're in the woods on an island. Tech is not great out here, but yeah, different diets, different ways of saying things. It's really important. And that's also a way that you know the difference between a spiritual teacher you should follow and one that you shouldn't. If you see that competitive vibe, if you see people talking down about other people, just listen. Does it feel like it empowers you or disempowers you? Because it's my opinion that any good spiritual teacher, which is going to guide you to find your own connection with source, is going to be something that feels expansive. Not someone who's like, oh, well, don't listen to this and that and this and that and this and that, right? You can tell by how you feel.
Absolutely. I always go through my ebbs and flows as well, like listening to a lot of people or listening to not as many people, or like narrowing down, or and you know, I don't really listen to other astrologers anymore, but at one point I did. And you know, it's just all kind of you got to let things flow with how you're feeling and how other people are vibing, because sometimes, you know, somebody will vibe with you for a while, and then it's sometimes time to, you know, let them go on their own journey and you go on your own journey, and you just kind of continue following your own heart and your own mind, your own essence of what you're feeling. And I think ultimately you'll always find like the highest people and highest path that's, you know, the right choice for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, education is important, so we get that vocabulary and we understand what's out there, but then eventually there's a good balance, because guides, I mean, we need to guide. If no one needed guidance, we wouldn't have a purpose. But on the other hand, the ultimate guidance is from within, kind of how you're talking about happiness. I didn't know how to be alone until I was 20 years old, and I had a spiritual awakening, and I broke up with my boyfriend of 4.5 years, and I was sitting in my apartment, and I realized I didn't know how to be alone. I realized that the moment I had alone time, I would instantly start messaging people or calling people or seeing who could hang out or what I could do. And I thought, wait a minute, I feel like a human should know how to be alone. But my whole life I hadn't had to be, because I had an older sister who was amazing and was by my side since I was really little. And then, I left and went to college and had friends and roommates, and I had my boyfriend and all this kind of stuff. And so I systematically taught myself how to be alone. And now, even with going through periods of like celibacy and singleness, I have a lot of people get in touch with me and say, how do you deal with being lonely? Aren't you lonely? How are you single for so long? Or how do you not care about not dating or being by yourself, even ultimately by yourself on private retreat, that kind of thing. And I think it comes around to, if we're used to being around people and then there's no one there, it feels empty. But if we go a little bit deeper, we see that it's not empty. There's a lot going on in there at any given time. And it's interesting. And it's important for us to enjoy our own company and make ourselves laugh and be ridiculous and whimsical. And then not only does it make our own life fuller and richer, but we're also more fun to hang out with. If we're not hungry for someone's attachment, just wanting to enjoy with people.
Exactly. Yeah. And it really is like filling your own cup, like what everybody always uses as the metaphor. And when you fill your own cup, then you have more to share with others, and then you can usually you also get a better sense of what does vibe with you when you're alone more, and you kind of get a sense of, oh, this no longer vibes with me anymore. I think I'm just gonna start looking in different areas to kind of like find new things that vibe with you. But
we all grow and change, and sometimes we want real social and to read and to study and to listen, and sometimes it is good to just sit back and remember all of the information that has ever existed is right here around here. It depends on what we're tuning into. I was thinking about this today because I was watching a TV show while I was having breakfast. It's actually called Grace and Frankie, and I'm very addicted to it on Netflix.
Nice.
So good. It's ridiculous and so good. Anyways, she was burning an art piece she made, one of the characters, and I was thinking about what amazing practice it is to create something and like pour your soul into it and then burn it. And I had this moment of thinking about like the Parthenon in Greece and all these kinds of things that have lasted. And I think of people saying, I want to make something that lasts. But then nothing lasts. Nothing lasts. This earth is just changing and remaking ourselves in volcanoes and floods and volcanoes and floods. And she makes new land and she swallows up old land. And it's the way that it's supposed to be. So it's okay to want to make lasting stuff, but also we don't want to get stuck in that, as that's the value of it.
Yeah, this is actually a concept I've thought of before too, is like, with more native or Aboriginal people, the structures they created were not long lasting. They were very like in tune with the earth. They were very impermanent. And the energy was able to flow on the land. There wasn't any stagnant energies getting stuck. I feel like sometimes what happens with buildings and cities and things like that is like energy gets stuck in all these little places and these corners, and it's like we gotta like the land needs to breathe, it almost feels like. And so
definitely,
yeah. But though I do find the pyramids to be awe-inspiring and things like that to also be awe-inspiring. So I like
balance.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on a shamanic journey in the mountains in Southern California one time, and I was visited by the energy of the elvish people, of elves like Lord of the Ring elves, the tall, that type of people, and feeling my heritage over there, and also kind of getting info from them. And they told me that, and it's funny because I haven't thought about this in years, but they told me that the marks of them are all over. It's just that their nature, so they didn't make structures that look like our structures. They made natural stuff. So if we knew how to look, we would see it all over. Plus, a lot of the ancient peoples, I have conversations like this with friends of mine who are not spiritual, who are maybe even atheists, but who do believe in science and energy, but just different paths. And I find myself saying over and over that the old civilizations are probably under the sea. The water has risen. So I know when I traveled to Hawaii, I felt like I was on the mountaintops of Mu. of Lemuria. And I could remember the temples way down there because I'd been there. But now we're way up on the mountains, which is the only thing that's out of the water. So it's important to realize that there probably is lots of evidence, but it's probably buried or deep somewhere. And so again, just go with what feels right and what works in your life at the time, what's calling you.
I mean, not to mention, I mean, Hawaii does have volcanic activity as well. So like if there were civilizations below the water, they would have gotten covered up in more land possibly. And
yeah,
so I have no idea. Yeah, that would be amazing if archaeologists or somebody could go down underwater. I don't know.
Maybe they have. I don't keep up on the research. I really don't know. I know every now and then I'll find an article about these amazing statues deep underground in the European seas, underwater in the European seas and everything. And you just look at them and you're like, wow, like maybe this was Atlantis. Maybe that was Atlantis, and maybe, but Atlantis was only one place. There were other places, you know.
Yeah.
There was this portal system that went all over the world and people would go through to the other places. But humans do a lot and we move a lot and we change a lot. And all it takes, I mean, the Library of Alexandria burned in just a short time and they'd been building it up for hundreds of years. So you can very quickly destroy something. Just because something doesn't exist doesn't mean it never existed.
I know. I feel like that was like a devastation to the potential like knowledge and history and like so much that we could have learned about ourselves. Who knows? Maybe even the origins of humanity were in those.
Probably, but now we have these little amazing computers that we keep in our pocket that can that can find out just about anything for us in a matter of moments. So that's nice.
Yeah, I know. I love technology. It's the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely feel like we got a little bit off topic, but so in terms of awakening and such, I mean, I know that you've mentioned meeting extraterrestrials in some of your videos and things like that. And I actually recently had a UFO experience that I posted on YouTube. Yeah, but it was in a very good video, and YouTube, I feel like it reduced the quality of the video as well, so you can't really see them. But it was
it's hard too for them to show up. Same thing with the Fae and the elemental kingdom. You'll try to take a picture and it will always be blurry, or you won't be able to tell, but you can see it if you're standing there.
Oh yeah, it was way amazing. And the crazy thing was I was actually watching a video of a lady who was like teaching us how to bend forks. So she was like helping us to raise our energy and our vibration. And I actually didn't grab a fork because I didn't feel like going inside or ruining a fork. But I still participated just to see, like, you know, if anything would happen. And that's when the UFO showed up, was right when she was bending her fork.
What kind of UFO was it? What did it look like?
So they were like kind of metallic-y and kind of like saucer-like, but they were like spinning, and they came like in a triangle pattern. There were 3 of them. And the first one was spinning, and the other 2 didn't really look like they were spinning as much. And to me, they appeared differently than how they appeared on the video, which was really interesting as well. So the one that was spinning kind of looked like a black star shape. And the other 2 were like, one like was kind of in a diamond pattern and one of them was a square. So like basically, you know, a parallelogram of sorts. Or like a square. But like one looked more diamond shaped to me, and they were all black and shiny looking, and they were like, they came up over my neighbor's house and then they went right overhead almost, but like kind of off to the side from my perspective. And so I was like, oh my gosh, is this real? Like, I can't even believe this right now. And I was like, I should take a video, but what if they go away? Like, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try and do a video. And so I did a quick video, and it was like, I was like moving around a lot and stuff, but and in the video I was able to zoom in, and like they appeared more metallic-y and silvery and like, you know, shiny. And the first one was spinning, so it kind of looked like it was spinning in the sun. And like the other 2 were also round looking in the video, which was
interesting.
Weird. And then, yeah.
Wow. You think, I mean, the cloaking stuff that they have, because experience with extraterrestrials is so varied. And it's so, I mean, people have had good experiences, bad experiences, everything in between, sometimes both, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I would give the advice to anyone who's interested to keep your mind very open, because on one hand, there are little saucers. I've seen them, I've been in them, all this kind of stuff. And I have also seen and been in ships that are bigger than mountain ranges that take up the whole side of the sky, you know? So, and they're different people, different agendas, you know, different types of technology. I often see it as Earth is an island, and we're still pretty new. We're still pretty indigenous. Most of our tech is only a few decades old.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that since we can't make boats substantial enough to cross the ocean, that nobody can. But we forget that all over the cosmos, there are civilizations way older than ours. Yeah, they figured it out. It doesn't mean that there's anything necessarily mystical about it. It could be very scientifically based. We just don't have access to that science yet because we're still babies. We're still so new. So again, one of the things I learned when I was a part of ICAR, which is the International Community for Alien Research, is that UFO experiences are so common, way more common than you think, and way more common than most people even realize. Because what happens if someone who's not open to that kind of stuff has one happen, they'll just shuttle it off into the part of their mind that they put stuff they don't understand, and then it's not up at the top. I did an informal poll when I was writing the first Starseed books and asked people if they'd seen UFOs. And there were 3 answers. One of them was the most uncommon one. The rarest of people said, nope, I haven't. I'm not interested. Boom, I felt that. And I was like, okay, fine, move on. You know, whatever. The second one, which was a little more common, but still pretty uncommon, with people who would go, yes, I have. I want to tell you everything about it, because for once someone is actually interested, you know. And then the overwhelming majority, I would say somewhere around 70 or 80% of people at least, would go, no, I don't think so. They kind of think about it for a minute. And then I would say, okay, the conversation would move on, because I would just drop it at random points. And then anywhere from 2 to 20 minutes later, they would say, wait, and it would have come up from their unconscious, and they would tell me some really crazy UFO story. I mean, the kind of thing that you're like, how could you not remember this? But if they don't think about it very often, and what's the point? I think even with mystical things, with multidimensional things, with spirits or elves or fae, people can be going through it at the moment, but if it's not useful experience, if they don't know how to use it in their life, they just kind of shuck it away. Science has shown that there's lots going on, even in the visible light spectrum, that we don't see because it's not useful. So our brains just delete it. Not to mention what's going on in the invisible light spectrum that our mind's eye can see, but that our physical eyes don't even see. Tons that we don't notice.
Yeah. I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and just see, like, you know, patterns. Like, I'll look at my ceiling and, like, I'll see, like, you know, geometric sometimes, or like just kind of like, you know, like right when I wake up, I see that sometimes.
Like through the veil a little bit, see the holographic makeup of what's going on. I used to see that in the sky a lot. I used to see staticky stuff or patterns, and when it first started happening, it definitely freaked me out significantly. But speaking of awakening again, it's important to know that this stuff has been going on forever. Just because we didn't know about it doesn't mean it's actually new. It's not actually new. It's just that we're now getting kind of internal clearance to deeper layers so that we're able to perceive it because it's useful to us now.
Yeah, and I totally know what you mean with, like, kind of, you know, writing experiences off, because, you know, when I was a kid, you know, things would happen sometimes and I wrote them off a lot easier. But even now, you know, like, there will be an experience and you're just kind of like, I don't know what that was. It was kind
so
of
often.
but like, I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah. Especially now being so far into it, because my original awakening was about 17 years ago, and it'll go deeper and deeper every few years. But one thing I have discovered is that sometimes I'll get a crazy intuitive hit or really intense multidimensional experience, and okay, fine. And I've learned to not necessarily even try to figure it out. I might do a little research or something, but so often I'm like, whatever, because sooner or later, and sometimes it's taken years, but I will get that other piece and go, that is what that was. Okay,
Ah.
great. And so now I've learned to just trust it. But again, that's something that only experience has taught me. There's no way I could have known that in the beginning. I had to get the confirmation and validation that came in its own divine timing.
Yeah, that, it's so crazy. Like, okay, one time, when I first moved in my house, there was a lot next door that was open. It wasn't used at the time. And one day, okay, there was like two experiences with, I think, a similar thing. I'm not sure if it was the same thing or if it was a similar thing, but like, I was just feeling like something was messing with me kind of with my heart chakra. I was like, okay, what is this? Like, just go away, because I was like,
no, thank you.
And then after that happened and I cleared it away, like kind of called upon like, some higher beings to kind of help me clear it away. I look out my window and there was a family of raccoons outside right after that, which was kind of wild.
Yeah.
And then a couple days later, I was in my dining room and I was kind of talking about that experience to my husband. And when we were sitting at the table, I saw like a little ball of like brown energy kind of come out from under the table kind of thing, or like went from like one corner of the house to like from under the table. And I was like, what the heck? And then like a couple days after that, or a day after that or something, I was looking up on Quora, just, randomly. And I was like, somebody was making a joke about like elves would like undo all the Lego sets or something, or some kind of joke answer about like, oh, they do come set up, but then little elves break them all apart or whatever. Section of that said something about there's actually house elves who either will help you or make things inconvenient for you, depending on if they like you or not. And they call them Nisser or Tomter. And this is like in Scottish or Irish folklore. And I was like, what? That's weird, like, what if that's what it was, and they usually come from the land. And so.
Yep. There's definitely, I had a Fae awakening back in 2012, actually 2011 into 2012. I didn't believe in Fae before that. I'd had my spiritual awakening before, and I believed in energy and plants, and I believed in the soul of plants, but I did not believe in little fairies with little flower skirts on, anything like that.
Right.
And I had a ton of experiences that year, living way out in the country, and I started to research collections of stories from Europe where people did believe in them, and I saw my experiences reflected over and over and over and over in these ancient myths. And that's also something that I've learned over time, is often if I'm meditating or I feel a presence or I have a vision or dream where there's a crazy looking being that I've never seen before, nor would I happen to imagine. So often, if I look in mythology or other types of tales, I'll find that being. Mm-hmm. And again, this is stuff that experience teaches you. So now I know, okay, when I have that feeling or when I see something like that, they're out there. If I look long enough, I'll find them, and there they are. But not everyone necessarily has that call again. And I don't know that everyone would share my experience, but at this point, I've learned to trust it, because by now I've had enough of it over the years to know what the trustworthy ones feel like, the trustworthy visions, versus when it's just my own brain exercising or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like the thing is, like, whenever there's a subtler energy going on, it's probably something, like, I don't know, like I'm often very sensitive to energies in a room or something, like, and I can kind of sense areas where I feel something happening, and I just kind of like, I kind of wave my hand around in that area. I'm like, what's going on? Yeah. So like, I mean, if you're somebody who's very sensitive, that's something, that you'd probably experience, like maybe even just like subtle things, like even lighting for me can be very like distracting, I find. And I think that's when people are more open to those sorts of things, like the fae or the gnome-like beings, or which I kind of feel like is what it was, is like a gnome-like being that I saw, like a little brown ball of energy. I felt like
that makes sense. Yeah.
Gnome thing going on.
yeah, I've definitely met a couple of those guys. Another tip for people is to look out of the corner of their eye when they feel a vibe, because just yesterday I was walking in the forest with a neighbor of mine who's 10, and we found all these little, I'm sure she's part fae, she loves dragons, she had one in her backpack while we were walking, and we found all these little fae portals, and one of them was a sweet mushroom growing on the side of a tree where someone had left a beautiful quartz point right on top of it, and we're oh my gosh, and you could definitely feel close to it how the air, it seemed to be warmer, but it wasn't warmer, but it felt warmer, you know. And so it's how your energy interacts. Not everyone would necessarily feel it with their hands like that, but one of the other things you can do is, if there's something over here that seems kind of interesting, look this way, but pay close attention to what you're seeing in your periphery, you know, that kind of thing. Everyone's senses work differently, so definitely try different things and start to learn what works for you. And it's also nice, and I find that usually it does happen that you at least have one friend that's open to it or going through similar stuff, so you can kind of check in with them and be like, what do you think of this? How do you feel about this? It is important to not, we were talking about this before the call some, to not shove the ideas down throats of people who are not open to them. Right. Not only because you can get in trouble doing that, as that like diagnosed with some weird thing or committed to some place that then will make you crazy, but also I've learned the hard way over the years that if your passion speeds up someone else's exposure to a multidimensional lifestyle before they're naturally ready and blossoming into it, what it can sometimes do is create scar tissue, so to speak, around it, so that when it is their time to awaken, they have a bunch of resistance and pain because they had to build that up because it wasn't time yet. So if there's anything I could just shout from the rooftops about this, it would be, in your awakening, don't force other people into awakening. It won't work. It will mess with your relationships. It will mess with your own sense of self. Find people who are kindred spirits. Don't try to force people who aren't kindred spirits into being kindred spirits. It doesn't help.
I agree. And yeah, to add to what you're saying too, is just like to maintain like a sense of who is open to, like, and to kind of when you'll know when you're in the presence of a kindred spirit, usually, I think, when it comes to sharing these kinds of experiences. But yeah, I certainly haven't fully opened up about some of these experiences to my YouTube channel, so this is kind of a first, especially talking about the like gnome-like being.
You know, it's way more common than you think. There's so many other people in my work. I am contacted by so many people who tell me stuff that they wouldn't tell anyone else because they know I won't think they're crazy. And what I've learned is it's so common. And everyone's got at least one or two experiences with either a ghost or a spirit or a fae or an ET or something like that. It's not that uncommon. It's just not, there's not a place for it currently. So people just don't really flow energy over there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've had, pretty much all of the above as far as I know, like paralysis dreams. Like I had one paralysis dream only, and it was a really scary experience. And I believe it was like a spirit, but I really don't know what it was. But it appeared to me as like an army man next to my bed. And like, it was like, they were like putting the fear of God into me when I like opened my eyes. You know, they were in my room when I opened my eyes before being awake, you know, in the dream. And I couldn't move. And like, so that was really scary. But I feel like it was maybe somewhat of a projection of my fear too, because I always heard a ghost story about like an army man like tickling the feet of kids like when they're sleeping or something, and I don't know.
Creepy. Yeah.
I heard a scary ghost story when I was a kid, and so I feel like it was maybe a projection of that fear being like whatever it was using my fear of that in the whatever, you know, like that's my theory.
And our brains all translate stuff differently. So it could be two people seeing the same thing. Their brains are gonna, that's why when people are starting to flex their intuition and having their spiritual emergences, it's important to know that the info might be correct, but your interpretation of it is what you need to hone. So it's important to like write down downloads you get, and then watch your world to see what ends up being true and what doesn't, because imagination and intuition are very closely related. And so often, yes, you need to check for authenticity. And I will also say that the worlds of multidimensionality are no more safe than any other place on earth. You can go even humans, you can go and hang out around some humans and you have a great time, and you can go hang around some humans, you'll get tortured, murdered, and killed, you know? So it's important to be grounded in that too, and to pay very close attention to what feels safe and what doesn't. Pay very close attention to what makes you feel good and what doesn't. And also be careful for things that feel sketchy. Like even if something makes you feel good, but it's by really flattering your ego, that's a thing to watch out for, a red flag. And various other stuff, which common sense will kind of tell you if you stay humble and open as you go through.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I know what you mean. So should we talk a little bit about some of the astrology that's been happening lately, and maybe like how it could relate to what's happening in terms of spiritual awakening and what people might be feeling right now?
Yeah.
So, as we know, the new moon just happened on January 24th, and it was a new moon in Aquarius, squaring Uranus. So this is definitely a time where people are waking up, people are having realizations, people are being shooken up, their energies are being activated, and their higher selves are probably coming in and receiving, you're receiving things from your higher self at this time. You're connecting with others more. And in that connection, it creates more awakening, I feel. And so, like right now is a crazy time for that. And the day before the new moon was when the moon was conjunct Saturn and Pluto. So like, this is like one of those kind of like dark night of the soul kind of energies. Whatever has been hurting, whatever's been bothering you, whatever you feel like, wherever you felt like maybe, like your shadow has been maybe coming up for you right before the new moon. And so like that has been a time of transformation. And so during the times of transformation, like what is like the best advice you can give to people who are going through like a dark night of the soul kind of thing?
Yeah, well, there's spiritual emergence and spiritual emergency.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the transpersonal psychology world, which is where I was educated in, they talk about spiritual emergency and about how often you just kind of wake up and realize that everything that mattered to you does not matter. That now all of a sudden you feel an entirely new life wanting to come through you, that things that used to satisfy you don't, people that used to feed your heart now feel empty, your relationships with them, other various things. So a few pieces of advice are: first, take good care of your body. Make sure you're eating nourishing food, make sure you're moving your body, make sure you're just taking good care of your vessel. So often, both for women and men who are on a spiritual track, they kind of forget about their body, and their body becomes weak and atrophied and not well nourished. And so if you are keeping yourself in shape physically, as well as eating nourishing foods and minimizing damaging foods and substances, it's so much easier. It goes so much faster. Your energy is just clearer. Also, meditation practice, so important, whatever that means to you. If you've never done meditation before, my advice is just to set your clock for 2 minutes on your phone. 2 minutes, that's it. Everyone can afford 2 minutes. And just sit and breathe for a minute and just be present with whatever's in there, trying not to grab onto anything. You can imagine that your consciousness is the sky and that thought forms are clouds. And you just kind of let them go without grabbing them or letting them come. You are going down the line. Also, very important, especially if you're feeling like you're wanting to make big shifts, and especially if you're feeling like you have a very big, important purpose. It is very important to wait until it gets grounded before you act on it, because you can really scare people around you. I'm seeing it so often lately that people get super intense about it, and then everyone around them starts talking about schizophrenia and delusions of grandeur and all this kind of stuff. And they're not necessarily wrong. That's why it's so important to wait until it's grounded. If you feel like, I have to do this right now, that's probably a sign that you should not do it right now. Anything that you need to do can wait 3 days.
Right.
can wait a couple more sleeps, can wait some meditations, maybe journal about it. Don't necessarily post it all over your social media. Don't necessarily force it down your spouse's throat or your parents or your siblings or whatever. Allow yourself to wait with it, because also as emissaries, because we're at the beginning of a huge renaissance of thought and energy for humanity. And as emissaries of this new way of being, the people who are feeling the shaman call, the priest and priestess call, it's so important to keep your cool, because that same crazy eye look that people get when they're having a great time is the same look that sometimes people get before they shoot up a building or before they do something else crazy. From the outside looking in, it's the same crazy eyes. And especially, right, I mean, it's true. And especially because, right? But yeah, it's important. I have seen people in manic episodes, and it is so similar to inspirational points. I mean, you think about the amazing creators of art and music. They were probably in manic episodes when they did a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But they channeled it into something useful and real. And so again, if you're starting to do that, make sure you're sleeping. Almost always when people are in manic episodes, they're not sleeping well. So make sure that you're sleeping, make sure that you're eating, make sure that you're getting grounded in the earth outside. And yeah, write it all down, journal it all down, and know that the more that you can maintain grace and decorum, the people around you who are looking to you to guide them. Because if they're not spiritually awakened yet, maybe they will never be, and that's fine. But maybe when they do have a spiritual experience, are they going to fear it because they saw you lose your shit? Or are they going to be open to experiencing it because they saw something beautiful happen for you?
Right. Yeah.
It's more than just us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like being more present too. Like if you are like getting like really up in here, I think that's when the mania can happen. And yeah, that's fun sometimes. Like especially like if you can write down like some of these crazy ideas you're having, or like
oh yeah, it's fun for you. It's just not fun for the people looking at you maybe who are scared, you know.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to like share it through conversation with people, because that's definitely when the crazy eyes come out for sure.
Right,
But like
right.
writing it down is a good like grounding exercise, as well as like just getting that exciting energy out into like somewhere, and or like doing creative art, whatever, you know, channel it into creativity. Don't channel it into crazy.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's important, right? And it's again one of the skills that you need to do this kind of work. You know, as shaman talking to other shaman, I'm not necessarily going to want to do co-work with someone who loses their shit when stuff goes down. Like, you want to make sure that you got it, that you're strong and you can handle it. And also, that energy is pouring through you for a reason. Often it's freeing you, unlocking certain things. You know, I see it often with people who are living in lives that isn't something they would necessarily have chosen. They kind of just found themselves here by kind of sacrificing little pieces of their authentic wants here and there. And then they get this crazy energy coming up to break them out of it. And that's fine. That's good. I mean, you need to get broken out of it if it's time for you to get broken out of it. But again, know that if you're feeling the spiritual call, you hold a lot of power and you hold a big responsibility to be a safe place and a helpful force in the world, not something that makes people around you feel like maybe it's not safe.
Right, right. Yeah, and I do think like when you're more like in your like lower chakras or grounded, more present, is like another way I see it, more centered within yourself, like that does create like a safe space and a safe like, it makes people feel comforted when you are like within yourself fully and like able to like be more present for others. And
Yeah, and present. That's the thing. Because even if you say, I'm feeling some intense energy right now, I'm going to go dance it out. I'll see you tomorrow, or I'll see you in a couple hours. You knowing where you are. And again, this is hard. This is work that you earn. You know, this is not like, oh, this is so easy. This is something that when it happens, it is a challenge. It's a growth point. But for you to be aware enough of yourself and also aware of the people that you're talking to, are they uncomfortable? If they are uncomfortable, it is not yours to browbeat them into submission or try to brainwash them into coming your way. I think that a lot of people don't realize they're doing this, but they are. It's not yours to force people to do anything. It might be yours to guide the way and light the way and give another option. But everyone is their own true guru. Everyone is their own true guide now in the world. I don't know if it was always this way. I can't speak for what it was 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. or even longer. But I know that now we're at this time of ultimate empowerment within, and knowing that we can trust ourselves. And if we need guidance, there are guides. I mean, I'm a guide, you're a guide. So many people are guides, and that's true, but not always. When people come to me and want me to do everything for them, I'm not interested. It doesn't actually feel good. It's not right. So again, I much prefer working with people who are empowered in their own truth, and then use me to get things that maybe they can't see. I definitely love working with people who are masters in what they do, which is different than what I do. And then we come and cross-pollinate. That's way better than someone who's debasing or abasing themselves and saying, oh, can you please guide me? I have nothing. That's draining and vampiric. You don't actually want to do that. But you don't necessarily know until you have these experiences. So that's why we're saying it, because trying to save you guys some time and effort and pain.
Yeah, definitely. And this Mars and Sagittarius squaring Neptune, today it's happening. And Neptune is also conjunct the moon and Venus. So the moon and Venus and Neptune together are very beautiful, spiritual, wonderful energies. They're very uniting, very peaceful. Like there's like a collective kind of peaceful sense right now, but Mars is squaring that. So it kind of brings out this kind of like tension from another kind of area. And that Mars in Sagittarius does actually have a tendency to be dogmatic. It has a tendency to want to push its ideals on others and like force the ideas upon people, like through like, just being like, I know I'm right. I believe what I believe. This is what you should believe too, because this is what I believe. No, like that kind of could be, this could be why like this is coming up for you too, is because of this Mars squaring Neptune. And this Neptune energy is a very spiritual energy. It's like kind of the energy of oneness, like the sense of unity among all people, and also like a sense of unity among all life, even, of course.
Wow, nice.
It's kind of that sort of sense of oneness. And in that oneness, though, it also reveals to us what is unconscious within the collective. So like things we don't look at, the things that we like kind of, shove to the side and don't like pay attention to. And so right now, like what Mars could also be doing though, is helping us to look at those things and bring them out. And this is a good way of like utilizing that Mars and Sagittarius energy, is like, because it wants to expand, it wants to grow, it wants to learn. Mars is very active in wanting to like go out there and discover new things and become like, aware and awake, and it is like, wanting to like go out there and learn new things and be on an adventure and that kind of energy. And so like when it's activating this stuff, we could be coming into new awarenesses of energy and like a lot of what we've been talking about, like subtler energies. This is all very Neptune ruled stuff. And like, because Moon and Venus are there too, the Moon is like the feminine too, and Venus is of course the feminine as well. So it's a very strong like feminine energy happening today on the day we're talking. And so able to access our intuition and really talk about a lot of what we believe in, or what we can imagine, or everything like that. So but of course that Mars in Sagittarius is warning us not to force these things onto others, and to be more like, be the light, don't shove the light down people's throats.
Yeah, it just doesn't work, So often, especially around the holidays, I'll get a lot of people asking, what do I do when I'm around the table with my family? And, and the thing that I find myself saying, again, because I've learned this the hard way, right, by making all the mistakes over the years and then realizing what works and what doesn't, is don't say anything, just glow. And if they need to know, they'll ask you. They'll say, why? What is it about you? What is it? And then you can say, oh, well, I'm practicing this new type of meditation, or I've been studying these ancient teachings, or whatever. And then that's going to be way more open than you sitting down and being like, all right, guys, I'm about to tell you some things. Because again, it might be your best path, but it might authentically not be their best path. And it's not yours to decide. There is a greater presence, whatever you want to call it. And you thinking that you need to change someone's path is also saying that you don't believe that the great presence that is all of our consciousnesses combined and more knows what it's doing. Of course it does. So, and you can still help or hurt,
Mm.
But there is a greater order that if you truly do want to be of service and assistance, then you'll get shown how to do it in a way that's peaceful and non-abrasive.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I was just thinking about too, like, um, especially when it comes to like food and stuff, I feel like there's a lot of dogmas out there right now with food. And something I've always done is just like kind of followed my own intuition on food. And I've always been like that. I've never really been one to have much of an issue with food, but like, um, when I became vegan, I did share that I became vegan. And it did come from maybe like a slightly like indoctrinated place, because I was just like, I didn't know this was happening, and
Yep.
so now I do, and yeah, like this is
Yeah.
and like I don't often like shove the information down people's throats, but I did do one video where I kind of like revealed all the information I found out. And
Yeah, and it's theirs. I mean, a video, it's theirs to watch or not. You're not forcing them to listen to you. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I did put warning, kind of intense.
And it's important for people to know something as simple as factory farming. I mean, I really believe that factory farming is one of the places that hell on earth does exist for these creatures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I don't eat animal flesh, but I also think that the progression for humans to be plant-based is something that's happening over time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a call. And I do think that if someone tries to do it before it calls them, their body can't process it right, and they will get weak, or they will not be able to survive in their most vibrant. So again, you gotta let them do their own pace. But I agree, that's something that I have, I struggle with too. And I was raw vegan for a while. Every now and then I get called to do that. And I remember the very first time I went raw vegan, my whole life changed. It was 10 years ago. I'll never be the same. My bone structure changed. I grew arches in my feet for the first time in my life. I was 27. Yeah, all this crazy stuff happened. And I was so sure that raw veganism was the way to go. And every time I'd put a bite of cooked food in my mouth, I could feel that it was killing my body. And I was reading the Essene Gospels, and he was like, Jesus is like, don't do anything to your food that you wouldn't do to your body, because if it kills you, it will kill the food, and then the food will kill you. And I was very crazy about it. But it's what I needed at the time. I think that I was in some type of chrysalis of metamorphosis that I did need to eat completely raw vegan for those months.
Mm-hmm.
But again, now in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, that was ridiculous for me to be so crazy about it for what anyone else was doing. It's one thing to be what you're doing. Again, there's the difference between discernment and judgment. Discernment is what you want to take in. Judgment is you thinking what other people should do or shouldn't do.
Right. And my husband and I kind of talk about this stuff a lot too, like with because I actually watch Joe Rogan sometimes, and he hunts his food, and I actually respect that.
More than factory farming, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's much better than factory farming, and at least he's taking it on himself. He's the one, like, I think he does bow hunting even, so like that's even harder than like just shooting an animal and then eating it. But like, I think that if you like, or I'm not trying to force my ideals onto anybody, but my opinion is for myself is, if I can't kill it myself, then I probably shouldn't eat it. And so like that was kind of one of the things that kind of got me started on the vegan path too, is like I was starting to question that, like, should I be eating an animal if I can't even kill an animal?
Yeah, that makes sense. You want to know something funny is, back when I was a meat eater, I used to say that. And I also used to say I could kill it. I could. And I ate meat, and I was like, I could kill this if I needed to. And but I also believed that you shouldn't eat it if you couldn't kill it.
Right.
And I think that so many people, I mean, I've had the conversation with a 3-year-old about, I'll never forget to the end of my life, her face when she looked at me and she said, wait, you mean chicken is chickens? And, but by then you're already addicted to chicken nuggets, and all the grown-ups around you are saying, no, it's cool. These are living sentient creatures, but they're not as good as us, so we deserve to kill them. And it's just what's always been done. Therefore, like, that's ever been an excuse why to do something. So I think that everyone should be given the choice. I think that And especially now that we live in a world that it is possible to get all these superfoods really easily, and it is possible to supplement our protein and our B vitamins and all these kinds of things.
Exactly.
It's a different game than it was even 20 years ago. There's more options.
Yeah, and like, if you don't need to, then you don't have to. If you don't need
Yeah.
to, you don't have to.
Yeah, come to you, whatever you want. I will say, for people who are thinking about this, especially for men, I've noticed something happen when people. I've known several men who have gone in and out of eating meat over the time that I knew them,
Mm.
and something happens to their minds and their emotion and their energy when they stop eating the flesh of creatures.
Mm.
It's like a type of numbness gets cleared away and some sensitivity grows. Granted, it can be too far where they get protein deficient and become very greedy and kind of lose their masculinity. But that's why I always say, have protein shake every darn day. If you're even thinking about going vegetarian, start your day with all the protein you need for that day and then decide, but I definitely have seen a shift in consciousness, a shift in sensitivity, a shift in empathy when you are or aren't eating the flesh of animals, because in order to eat it, something in you needs to go numb so you don't feel its pain, especially if it's factory farmed or slaughtered in a way that is traumatic, because all those chemicals are still in that muscle tissue and you're eating them and you're imbibing them. So you don't feel like you have to wall off, and then you wall off in other places as well.
I agree. And I think that when you're ready to know like what's happening, you're going to be ready to like watch the things, that will shift you. When you're not ready to know what's happening, you're going to close yourself off to those pains. Like I actually remember, like I did watch a few things before I went vegan, and I was like, oh, well, we just got to buy grass fed, and so
it's movement in the right direction.
Yeah. And then what I realized though is that even when you're doing grass fed, for the most part, there's still, when you go out to eat, you're not always going to verify the source of the meat that you're eating. And
yeah, and it depends on what you've seen and been exposed to. Like when I drive up and down the coast of California, there are a couple of really intense factory farms. And you drive by and see the miles of cows. I call them cow concentration camps because it's horrible. And you can smell it. Even if you turn off your AC, no air is flowing in your car, you turn off all the fans, it still permeates your entire car. You can't get away from it. And then up the road a little bit, you see all of the little white houses where they put the freshly born babies in, away from their moms, and you just can feel that there's something wrong with this, and who am I to say whether all humans in the world should or shouldn't eat animal flesh? But I do know that forcefully inseminating things, making them grow in ways that are not natural, stealing their babies, all that kind of stuff is just wrong. You can just tell that it's wrong, and there are better ways to do it. And yeah, I think that it's slowly coming around. But again, people get very, very up in arms about their food, and if they're thinking that you're trying to take something from them. So that, along with like sexual practices that harness your chi and stuff like that, again, you can't force that on anyone. But I will say that if people are curious, like, how do you get your protein, right? That's always the question.
Yeah.
Go look up vegan bodybuilders. There are plenty of vegan bodybuilders that put their menus online for free, that you can see their recipes and stuff, that if you're curious about how to get protein, just do an internet search and you will see.
Yep, absolutely. And even like, if you're worried about iron too, making sure to consume vitamin C with the high sources of iron. Lentils are a good source of iron, and there's a lot of foods that have iron in them. And of course, just mixing it with the vitamin C rich foods. I think broccoli has a lot of vitamin C, even oranges, of course, and even bell peppers have vitamin C too. So like if you're making spaghetti, if you get like a whole wheat spaghetti, that's going to have a lot of iron, or lentil based pastas even now out there. So like mixing food properly so you're getting like maximum absorption, and of course multivitamins.
I have never ever felt malnourished since I went vegetarian. I definitely did it as an experiment because the person I was in a relationship with at the time wanted to try it. So we did it together. And I think since, I haven't spoken to him about this in years, but I think he's back to carnivore these days. But my body just thrived. And I realized that, oh, I'm not supposed to eat meat. Like, just whatever my makeup is, I'm not supposed to try to digest that really dense stuff. And after that, I found out, I then was exposed to a lot of the stuff that I didn't even know before about the dark side of that industry. And the last burger I ate, I had visions of the slaughterhouse while I was eating it. Again, that stuff that comes through the muscle tissue, and all you need to do is see that once and you are off it. Like, no one can convince me, because I never want to experience that again. And also for me to feed that industry, I really feel like, for instance, if someone is a meat eater, factory farm meat eater, I think you should go to a vigil once. If someone eats meat, I think they should go to a slaughterhouse vigil one time just to see. And then if you decide to keep eating meat, then you decide to keep eating meat, and that's your decision. But I think you should at least know what goes on, because it's so shielded from us, because it's so messed up. And the industry knows that if that were more obvious, it would tank. Yeah. So I just think it's so important to educate yourself.
Yeah, and they have been trying to like pass laws where you're not allowed to bring cameras into slaughterhouses now or something. They were trying to pass.
Like, why? Why are you trying to hide?
Yeah, so that just goes to show how like sketchy that actually is. But yeah, one thing that was interesting too was leading up to me going vegan, I actually went to like all of the meat places I used to like, right? And before I even knew I was going to do it, that's the weird thing. Like we went out for
goodbye.
Yeah, we went out for like burgers and like, all these things. And then like November of that year, we watched Cowspiracy, and I was just like, yeah, I'm glad, well, it's like we almost knew we were going to do this. It's weird.
And now there are so many options. There's Beyond Burgers, and I did know a meat eater who was saying how nervous he was about the Beyond Burgers because they're and all the meat substitutes that are highly processed. But then I saw that very same person eat pepperoni on a pizza from Domino's one time, and I was like, wait, the processing and chemicals in that I know are not more than whatever kind of meat substitute you're freaked out about. So again, you can see like the blindness in people's minds, and we all have it. It's all just clearing away what we've got as best as we can, trusting that our path will show us what the next thing is to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And, the one thing I definitely do not miss is finding little chunks of cartilage or fat or whatever, those weird things, like especially in like burritos or something, I do not miss that at all.
No, I don't. Yeah, it is a shift, I will say. I went vegetarian and vegan, and then even now I'll eat some animal products sometimes. Like on the island, there are local chickens that people have and raise. So sometimes I'll eat eggs. If cheese is from a place where I know the cows are treated well, or even like Amish butter. When I see Amish butter, I get it because it has healing properties. And the Amish people have to treat their cattle really well because they don't use technology. So they have to keep them healthy and immune correct. So again, and I eat honey. So I think that every person has to find their proper spot to be in.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, do what works for you. Just educate yourself and know what you're getting into, in my opinion. I think that knowing is better than not knowing, and just really choosing whatever makes sense in your life. But absolutely, I always end up talking about veganism for some reason. I think I like to push people's buttons. I don't know why.
People get very intense. I mean, I don't even talk about things like breatharianism and fasting all that often because people get really scared about that. There's something, I think it's just evolutionary. I mean, if there's something way outside of your paradigm and you think that you might have to deprive yourself, people sometimes get super upset about it. So that's why I mostly just kind of do it on my own time. I talk about it every now and then, but not very much because that one just doesn't happen to be my fight. There are plenty of fights that are my fights, but I don't think that's one of them yet. But I mean, and it's also showing like you age slower, your life lasts longer. Low caloric intake has been shown for years to make you live longer and healthier, and your immunity. If I'm ever feeling under the water and under the weather, and I just fast for a day or two, the body heals. So just do your research and see and try it out for yourself and see what works.
Is it raining over there right now?
No, is it raining there?
Yeah.
It was earlier. There's a puddle on the patio.
I was thinking because like maybe that was why the Freudian slip under the water.
Ooh, maybe.
Quite
It could
literally,
be.
I'm under
It
the
is cloudy, so there are lakes in the sky.
So yeah, okay, cool. Well, I think that's like everything I could possibly think of right now. Do you have anything else you want to like, any closing statements?
Yeah, just encouragement
Mhm.
and telling people to have heart and
Mhm.
to know that whatever struggle you're facing, you're not doing it alone. There are billions of people on this planet, and you would be shocked if you knew how similar we all are to each other in the ways that matter. When you feel very, very most alone, try to link up with that golden grid around the planet of all of the people who are awakening and feeding into it and gaining strength from it, because there are many, many of us. We are rare, but we're not as rare as you would think, and more all the time. So trust your own journey. Let yourself come and go through things that make sense. Just because you adopt something sometimes doesn't mean you have to for the rest of your life if it doesn't feel right. Yeah, and just try to have patience and trust, I think.
Awesome. Absolutely. And always have hope and know that, you know, no matter how things look in this moment, they can always get better, and always listen to like your heart and your higher guidance, and it will always show you where you're meant to be, and it'll help you find the right people as well, I believe. So thanks for watching this video. Have an awesome time.